Hey guys, so in this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up an automated AI lead qualification system. So let me show you a quick demo. So the use case here is you are collecting leads on your website and maybe not every lead is qualified. So in this example, we're going to send our qualified leads to our CRM over here and our non-qualified leads to Airtable. Okay. And we're going to do this with Gumloop. So let's do this in action. Okay, so we're going to take the CEO of Vercel. So let's pretend he's filling in his information on our Typeform, and then he also needs to tell us his website. So when he hits submit on the form, what's going to happen is our automation is going to kick off inside of Gumloop, and it's going to go out, research the person, research the company, and then based on certain criteria we've given it, it's going to determine on its own whether the lead is qualified. And if it is qualified, it will add it to our CRM. And if it's not qualified, again, it's going to add it to Airtable. It's going to do a little web research. It's going to scrape a LinkedIn profile. We're going to use a couple of AI steps here. And you can see it has decided that it is qualified, or that Guillermo is qualified. And you can see it has added him to the CRM as a contact, and Airtable is still blank. So all of that was done with no code inside of Gumloop. I'm going to walk through an overview of this setup, and then we can do it step by step. So the use case here is, say you are running ads to get new leads, and instead of following up with every single lead to make sure they're qualified, we're going to do a little pre-qualifying on the front end. So this entire flow is built inside of Gumloop. We don't need make.com, we don't need N8N, and we don't need relevance AI. Gumloop can handle the entire flow natively. So let me just walk through exactly what we have going on here, and then we can build it out step by step. So this is going to be activated on a form submission, okay? A new lead submits their contact information either through an ad or through your website. In this example, we're using Typeform. And then we're doing a couple of steps down here. So the first is a AI web research, where we're going to go out and fetch the company LinkedIn URL, because we're going to need that for the next step. Now, at the same time, you can see I have a couple of extract data nodes here. So what this is doing is it's taking the information from the form, and it's going to generate only what I want. So in this node, it's going to give me just the domain name. And in this node, it's going to extract the full name and the email address so that I could pass that on further on the automation. So we're going to take the company URL from the web research node, and we're going to pass that to Gumloop's integrated LinkedIn profile scraper. So this is going to scrape the company LinkedIn, and it can give us a whole bunch of output, like the name, the description, the industry, the company size, that we can then use to help determine whether the lead or the company itself is qualified. Then we're going to pass that to an Ask AI node, and this is really the qualification step. So I've wrapped this in an if-else node, and AI is going to determine, based on the LinkedIn information, whether the lead is qualified or not, based on a couple of determinations that I've given it. And so it's going to analyze the LinkedIn attributes. It's going to take my prompt, and at the end, it's going to output with a yes or no on whether the lead is qualified or not. And then finally, based on the AI's determination on the qualification of the lead, if it's qualified, I'm going to send it down a subflow if path. And if not, I'm going to send it down a different path, which is the else path. So all the if path is over here is we are going to write it to our CRM. So in this example, it's Atio. And if the lead is not qualified, maybe you still want to hold on to the lead information. We're going to store that in Airtable. So these are set up as subflows, which I'll walk you through, right? So we've got the Airtable subflow, we've got the Atio subflow, and then we're using those subflows as their own nodes in our main flow. So again, if the lead is qualified, it's going to go to Atio. And if the lead is not qualified, it's going to go into Airtable. All right, so let's build this out in Gumloop. Again, we don't need make.com, we don't need N8N, and we don't need relevance AI. We can do all of these steps natively in Gumloop, which is why I like it so much. Plus, it's got a great user interface. So I'm in my main hub here, and we're going to do this new flow from scratch. So we're going to hit new flow, and we can rename this to lead qual YouTube. So give your flow a name up here. And you need to think about how we're going to trigger this automation, right? How does it kick off? So in the example here, I'm going to use a form, and we're going to use a Typeform integration. So I'm going to hit this plus button for the node library. I'm going to search for Typeform, and you can choose either of these, really. The Typeform submission reader, I'm going to drag this onto my canvas. And if you are not connected to your Typeform, you're just going to be prompted to sign in with single sign-on, so you're connected through Gumloop. Now, after that, we want to activate this as a trigger, which means every time we get a new lead through our form, it's going to kick off the entire automation. And from here, you just need to choose your workspace. I only have one. You need to choose your form from the drop-down menu. So this is my form, lead qualification 3.0. I'll get to Typeform in just a second. And then you want to select the fields from your form. So I'm collecting contact details, which includes several different forms. And I'm collecting the company website as well. So once you select those fields, you'll see that they are available as outputs over here. So your Typeform node should look like this. All right, so let's create our form inside of Typeform. So I'm on the free plan, and once you're logged in, you can create a new form like this, and we're gonna start from scratch. Now, there's tons of fields that you can collect, obviously, from Typeform, and you're gonna wanna think about what info do you wanna collect, what info do you wanna qualify on, and then what info do you want to send to your CRM? In this example, we're going to keep it pretty simple. So the first thing I'm going to click on here is the contact info, which is going to give us a couple of fields, and we're not going to use all of them. So for instance, in this example, I don't want the phone number. I want the first name, the last name, and the email. I'm not going to ask for the company name, but later on, I will ask for the company URL. So for the contact info, first name, last name, and email. And now we're going to go and click up here and get add contact. And what we want next is the website URL. We're going to use this to scrape LinkedIn, and we can name this. Sorry, I didn't name the first one. So we can name this website URL, and we can name this contact info. So once you have your two fields, or it's really more than two fields, but two elements set up, you can publish this, and then you can copy the link, and you can paste that link into a new tab like this, so you can test this form in your browser. You can also embed this form on your website. And again, once you go into your Typeform node inside of Gumloop, you can refresh your workspace, and you can grab the new form. So you can see my new form is right there. That's the one I just created. So this is where you can choose from your forms, but I'm going to leave mine as lead qualification 3.0. And so that's how you create the form on Typeform and then link it up to Gumloop. All right, what I want to do next is for Attio, which is the CRM over here, in order to add the company field into Attio, I need just the naked URL, the naked domain. So not the HTTPS:// but just Vercel.com. But when I think about how the data is coming in with the company website field, it's going to include the full path of that URL. So I need to clean up the URL in order to feed it into the CRM. And to do that, I'm going to add a new node over here, and I'm going to add extract data. So let me just drag this onto my canvas over here. And again, what I want to do is take the company website, which is the full path of the URL, and I want to just strip it down to just the domain. So what I'm going to do is drag the output from Typeform to my extract data input over here. And what I'm going to do next is rename this so it can be a little more specific in case it gets messy on my canvas. So this is going to be extract domain. Now, what I need to tell this node is what is the content that I want to extract from, right? From the previous step. What am I extracting? Well, you can see here in purple with these inputs, I have those two inputs are now passed down here. And what I want to extract, obviously, is the company website. So I can just drag that into this field over here. And now I'm going to give it a little context on what exactly I want. So I'm going to say extract only the domain name, but I also need to give it the data, right? Like what is the actual data that I want to pull out? Okay, so I'm going to click add data. I'm going to call this domain. The type will be text. And for a little bit more context, I'm going to say extract only the domain name. And I'm going to give it an example. So openai.com as an example. Okay, so it's going to pull in the full company website URL from Typeform, and it's going to strip it down to only give me the domain, openai.com, vercel.com. Again, I'm going to need this to pass this into my CRM in a later step. And next, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing, except I want to grab the full name and the email address. Now, another reason that we have to do this is if you think about how Typeform is outputting this, right? So this is technically one output, right? Contact details, which includes three pieces of information: first name, last name, and email. We want to chunk that out. So again, when I update my CRM or when I update Airtable, right, I'm going to need a specific field, for example, for email address. But with Typeform, this is all coming through as kind of one big list. So this is another reason we need to extract. So on the left hand, we've extracted the domain. And on the right hand, we're going to do the email address and the full name. So let me duplicate this node here, and I'm going to drag this over here. Now let me rename this to extract name and email. Okay. Now I need to drag the output from Typeform to the input here as well. So now this is going to be available. And again, what do I want to extract? It's the company details over here, right? So content to extract from is contact details. And I'm just going to give it a little context by saying this information contains a person's first name, last name, and email, just so it is aware of what's in there. And then for the data, we don't want the domain because we're already doing that. So we want the full name. So I'm going to enter the name as full name. Type is going to be text. And then the description is just going to be the person's full name. For example, Sam Altman. Because again, remember how this is coming through our Typeform. We have a first name and a last name, but in Airtable, we're going to write the name as one field and the same thing in Attio. So that's why we're extracting this information out. And now to get the email address, I need to add another data point here. So I'm going to click that. We'll call this email. Type will be text, and description, the person's email address. For example, Sam at openai.com. Okay, so we're taking the Typeform and we're just going to split out this information. We're basically manipulating the text so we can pass it on further down the automation. Now, just to make sure everything looks good, we can come up here at any point and test this just by clicking the Run button. And what Gumloop is going to do is take the last Typeform submission and use that as the example. And so we can see what's going on here in the right-hand sidebar. So I can click on all inputs and outputs. And for the website, so this was Vercel CEO that came in through the Typeform. So the Typeform is outputting his first name, his last name, his email, and the company website as two different fields. And we can look at both of these nodes here, right? The extract domain and the extract name and email by clicking in all input and output. So the input that I gave it was vercel.com, and it did clean it up, right? Remember, we asked it to clean up, get rid of HTTPS to give us only the naked domain. So it did that correctly. And we can go into extract name and email. So this is all the information that it was given, the contact details, right? 3 bits of information in one field, basically. And I asked it for the email. So it pulled out the email address only, and it combined the name. So you can see what it's doing is it's stripping out all of these kind of labels here, and it's giving me only what I need, which is the first name and the last name combined into the full name. So it's doing that accurately. And again, you can come in here and test your flows at any point just by hitting run. All right, next we need to think about our LinkedIn step. We're going to be using the Gumloop integrated LinkedIn node, but if we think about it right now, we don't have any LinkedIn information, right? We've got a first, a last name, an email, and a domain, but we don't know anything about this lead. We don't know anything about this company at all, right? So is this company worth doing business with? We're going to use the company LinkedIn scraper, but first we need to know the company LinkedIn URL. So what I'm going to do is add a new node here, and I'm going to do the AI web research. Okay. So this is basically an AI agent that can go out and basically do anything on the internet, right? It's probably the most powerful node inside of Gumloop. Okay. I'm going to place this right here, and I'm going to drag, actually, important point. You'll notice there is no input yet and no output. And that's because for this node, and I think it's the only one in Gumloop, you need to give it a prompt first, and then based on your prompt, it's going to determine on its own what should be the input and what should be the output. So again, what I need here is what I want to do is take a company URL and have the agent go out and find the LinkedIn profile, right? So I think I have this on my clipboard here. So what I'm saying here is, given a company website, search Google to find the corresponding LinkedIn company profile URL. Okay. Now, with my prompt in hand, I'm going to hit generate input and outputs. And now this node is going to determine what the inputs and outputs should be. So let's let that run for just a second. All right. And so we can see here the input that it's looking for is the company website. And then what it will output is the LinkedIn URL. And it will also output its reasoning and its citations by default. So what I want to do is drag the Typeform output into here as input, right? Because it's asking for the company website, and it knew to ask for that. So now I have this available to me as input from Typeform. So let me drag company website over here. Okay, so now that's the context that it's dealing with. It has the prompts, and it will output the LinkedIn URL. Let me just save that. And if we want, we can test this step as well just by hitting run. And we can see the AI web research node is running. So again, it's taking the company website URL from the Typeform. And I basically told it, hey, take this website, go out and find its LinkedIn profile for the company. And that's what I want to be sent back as the output. So again, this node in Gumloop is somewhat new. It is, again, in my opinion, probably the most powerful node in all of Gumloop. It truly is, I hate to say it, it truly is an AI agent on its own, because it takes a natural language prompt and goes out and determines what it needs to do. It does it on its own, and then it comes back with the output that you're looking for. So let's just let this run for another minute or so. All right, you can see it took about a minute to run. Now I can come in and click into the input, right? So this is the input I gave it, was Vercel.com. Again, it will always include citations and its reasoning in its output. I don't really care about that right now. What I need is the LinkedIn URL. And this is the correct LinkedIn company URL for Vercel. So it nailed that step. Again, this is how you can test. And so now that we know that this is working correctly, we can move on to our LinkedIn node. All right, now that we have the LinkedIn URL of the company, we can actually go out and scrape LinkedIn. Now, as I mentioned, Gumloop has a native LinkedIn scraper, which is awesome. I was watching a different video, and it was make.com tied in with Relevance AI and using webhooks. We don't need to do that. We're going to go into Gumloop here. We're going to look for the LinkedIn nodes. And in this example, we're scraping the company to see if the company is qualified. Obviously, if you want to search individuals to see if they themselves are qualified, there's a separate profile scraper, but we're going to use the company profile scraper. So let me just drag that down here. All right, so we need to provide this node with the company LinkedIn URL. Okay, so we're going to drag the output from our AI research agent. And once I do that, you can see we have 3 fields available to use as input. And luckily, one of those is the LinkedIn URL. So I can drag that right into this field. And now it will have that LinkedIn URL as the input. Okay. And then the input down here is the information that we want to provide. This is already set as LinkedIn URL, and it's pre-filled in the field above. Now for the scraped information, what information do you want this scraper to include? So it can grab a ton of stuff, and I'm just going to show you the capability of it by grabbing a bunch of information that I'm not going to use in this demo, but just to show you what's possible with this scraper here. So we've got the company name, the description, industry, website, company size, company type, and where they're headquartered, right? And there's even more information. So this built-in scraper can get a ton of information from LinkedIn. Okay, so now this looks good. And again, if you want to keep running this and keep testing it, I'm not going to do that. Otherwise, this video is going to be twice as long as it needs to be. But if you're one of those folks who likes to test every single step, go ahead and run it, or you can even resume your flow from a previous step. So you can click resume, and then you see these little pink bars here. So you can resume the flow from different parts of the automation, so you don't have to rerun the entire thing, or you can run the entire thing from scratch if you want. But again, to keep this moving, I'm not going to do that right now. We've got our LinkedIn node set up. So now we're scraping the LinkedIn profile URL, and we're going to output a bunch of information that we're going to use to determine whether this company is qualified or not. Okay, now it's time to start thinking about qualifying these leads, right? And using AI to take the output from the LinkedIn scraper to determine whether the lead is qualified or not. So we're going to use AI to do that, of course. So I'm going to go back to the node library and drag an AI node onto my canvas. Now, what I also am going to want to do is wrap this node in an if-else node. Okay, and I'll explain this more, obviously, as we go. But let me just search for if-else, right? So you can see under Flow Basics, I have an if-else node. So I'm going to drag that on top, and I'm going to drag my Ask AI node kind of right into it like that. So you can see how it's wrapped in. Now, the reason that I'm going to do this is because what the Ask AI node is going to do, based on my instructions, this node is going to determine, yes, the lead is qualified, or no, the lead is not qualified. It's going to make a yes or no determination. And based on that determination, we need to send this flow down different routes. Remember, if the lead is qualified, I want to send them to my CRM. And if the lead is not qualified, I still want to save their information, but I'm going to save it in Airtable instead. Okay, so this is the determining step. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is drag the input from LinkedIn, drag that output to the input for Ask AI. So now I have all of these LinkedIn fields available to me. Now, what I want to do is prompt the AI to instruct it on how to qualify these leads. So let me start with this. So I'm going to say, your task is to determine if a lead is qualified or not based on their LinkedIn information. Here are the 3 criteria for a qualified lead. And this is just an example, obviously. So I'm saying it's only qualified if it's an AI company, it has 10 or more employees, and it is based in the United States. And what I should also do, actually, to be more clear, is it must meet all 3 criteria, just to be a little more clear. Okay, so there's the first part of the prompt. And now what I want to do is feed this information to the AI node. Okay, so I need to give it this input as context, because right now it's flying blind. It has none of this information. So I'm going to paste this onto my node here. And so I'm going to give it the, again, company description, the company size, and the company location. And from those 3 pieces of information, it should be able to determine whether the lead is qualified or not. So for the company description, again, I can take this from the LinkedIn node output and just drag that right there. Company size, I can do the same thing, drag that right here. And then the company location, again, I want US-based companies. I'm going to take the headquarters and put it in here like this. Now I'm going to say, if the lead is qualified, respond only with yes. If the lead is not qualified, respond only with no. Okay, so this is, kind of a big prompt. And what you can do in Gumloop is choose your model here. So this is slightly more complex. So I might want to use Claude 3.7 Sonnet for this because we're asking it to handle a lot of information and make a determination on that information. And so I'm going to use Claude as my model there. All right, but we're not done with this node yet. So remember, we wrapped this in an if-else condition. So we need to add the condition here, right? Where it says add condition. And what I'm looking for is the response from this node. Okay. Now I said the output is going to be either a yes or a no. So that should match the response up here. So I'm going to say response text contains yes. And so by doing that, that's going to determine the if path, right? So if the response text contains yes, then that'll follow the if path. If not, it's going to follow the else path. Now, the last thing that I want to do in this node here, and it's already selected, is this pass inputs through. So this is going to take the inputs for this node and make them available in the outputs in the next step. So make sure that is turned on. But otherwise, we're looking good here. We've got our condition. So response text contains yes, and then ask AI node, we've got our prompt here to determine, based on this LinkedIn information for this company, is it qualified? If yes, say yes. If not, say no. Now, this is where we are going to introduce the idea of a subflow. Okay. So if you think about where we are in the automation, we have the if and else path. And the idea is, if the lead is qualified, we're going to send it to Attio. If it's not qualified, we want to send it to Airtable. Now, to do this, we are going to create a subflow, which is basically just a way to insert a flow as a node. Okay. It'll make sense in just a minute. We're basically going to create another 2 separate flows and then insert those as nodes. Again, this will make sense if you haven't done it in a second. So I'm going to create new subflow here, and we can rename this to the if path. Okay, so we need 2 separate paths here. We've got the if path, and then let me do another one, and this is going to be the else path. Okay, and remember, so the if path is Attio. We want to write it to Attio. So in the if path, this is now blank. What I want to do is search for the Attio node to create our contact. So I'm searching for Attio here, and then I want to create a contact, okay, or a contact writer. So let me drag this onto the canvas, and for the inputs, what do we want to write into our database? So the fields that I'm going to use are the person name, the company, and the person email address. Okay, so this is the info that I want to be written into my CRM. Now, in order to do this, we need to create separate inputs kind of up here manually. And what I mean by that is that in the node library, there are nodes that are just called inputs. So at the very top under Flow Basics, I can see there's an input node over here, because right now this is running as a subflow, but there's no information going in here yet. So we kind of need to create dummy information, okay? So I'm going to drag the input node up here, and I'm going to need 3 of these, actually 4 of these. I'll explain in a second. But the first 3 that we need, right, are the person name, the company, and the email address. So for the input name, I'm just going to call this person name. And I'm also going to rename this node to match that, just so it's not confusing in a second. And I'm going to duplicate this twice, right? Because what else do we need? We need the company. So let me call this input node company. and then rename this node to company. And then the third one that we need is the email address, okay? Again, this is kind of like dummy input. So let me rename this to email address. Same thing with the input name. And now what's going to happen is I can drag these three inputs here, this and like this. And now these are going to be available as inputs that I can put into Attio. And again, this is just kind of placeholder data that we're going to use in our main flow. So person name, I'm going to drag that output here. This is why I renamed them company over here, and email address over here. Okay, so we're not quite done with this subflow. We'll come back to it in just a second, but I want to recreate this in the else path to use with Airtable. So if I click Shift, I can grab these three nodes, copy them to my clipboard, come into the else path, and then paste these over here like this, right? So I can reuse these. So I've got the person's name, the company, and the email address that I can now feed into an Airtable writer. So again, remember, any unqualified leads, we still want to save their info, so we're going to send them to Airtable. So we need to add an Airtable node here. And this is going to be an Airtable writer. It's going to write these from scratch. And if you haven't mapped your Airtable account to Gumloop, you can do that with single sign-on. It's really easy. And once you have done that, down here, you can select your base and the table. So you can see I've selected my contacts database, which is this. It's table number 1, and it's pulling in these three fields, okay? The name, the email, and the company name. And so what we want to do is the same thing we did earlier, which is to drag these input nodes, the output of the input nodes. We'll drag all three of them into the Airtable node like this. So these are now available as inputs for Airtable, right? So for name, we need the output from person name. And we got an error here, and this is an important error that I'll keep in the video, is because of the option down here on writer mode. So right now, so the error that it's giving is it was expecting a list of values instead of a single item. And the reason right now it's expecting that list is because in the writer mode here. So you can see it defaulted to add new rows, which means it's expecting to add multiple rows. So multiple rows meaning a list of items. But what I'm feeding it here is just an individual item, like one person's name, one company name, one email address. That's how I'm giving it information. But because this is on add new rows, plural, it's expecting more than one. It's expecting a list of names, a list of company names, etc. So the easy way to fix this is just to change the writer mode, right? We're not trying to add multiple at once. We want to add a single row. So you can see when I change that, we get rid of the error, but it looks like we have to add some of this back in. So let me drag email address back. Let me drag company name back. And just to be safe, let me re-add the name. So that's the way to fix that error. And right now we are looking pretty good. All right, now in order to get this subflow to work in our main flow, we need to add a dummy input just so all of the data flows in sync. So we're going to add another input here for both the if and the else path. So let me duplicate this node. The difference is we're not going to connect this to anything. So let me just call this if input. All right. Again, we're not going to connect this to anything. And then I'm going to do the same thing in else. And we'll just call this one else input. All right. Now we can go back to our main flow and add these subflows as their own nodes. So back in the subflow. So what you can do now when you go to plus and go to subflows, you can see that these subflows are available as nodes. So let's first run the if path. So let me drag this down, and you can see this is the entire subflow now available as a node. And we want to connect two inputs to this. The first is from the name and email node right? So we want to be able to bring that in. So let me drag that down first. And then the other thing that I want to bring in, of course, is this if path. So let me drag the if path over here as well. Now we need to map these fields, right? So first, for the person name, I'm going to grab the full name. And for the company, I have to grab the extract. I forgot to drag this one as well. So we need to connect the domain, obviously, which I did not do. So let me come back here and connect the domain output as well. And now we will have it. There we go. So we have the domain output here for the company. The email address is going to be this one. And now again, that dummy node, we just need all of the data to pass as one. And we can put anything in here. It's not going to be used. So if I go up to the Ask AI one, I can just grab this if prompt. And now our subflow looks pretty good here with the if path. And now we just need to do the same thing for our else path. So we want to grab this else subnode here, or subflow rather. So I'm going to add a node here, and then under subflows, I can just drag that entire subflow as a node, okay? And we want to do the same thing where we're going to map the data here. So we want the else data over here. We want to grab the extract name and email, and then I want to grab the extract domain as well. And so we can start to map this. Now for the person name, I can grab full name. For the company, I can grab the domain. For the email address, I can drag the email. And again, we have a dummy input here just so all of the information goes out together. And we're not using the else input, but I can drag the else prompt from Ask AI just so it all connects together. And now we have our if path, which is going to write to Attio, and we have our else path, which is going to write to Airtable, and we have that now connected to our Ask AI node, which is making the decision on whether the lead is qualified or not. All right, I think we are ready to test this flow. So I've cleared out Airtable. I have not cleared out Attio, but I'm not going to use him anyway. But let's just clear him out as well. So Attio is blank, Airtable is blank. So what I'm going to do now, and just to refresh on our qualification score here. So we're looking for an AI or tech company with 10 or more employees and in the US. So we're looking for all three of those. All right. So, and if that's for a qualified lead, if not, it goes to Airtable as unqualified. So let's do a non-tech person. Let's do and I don't know if this is the email or not, but the founder of Shake Shack, which is obviously not a AI or tech company. So let's put his details in and their website URL. So I'm going to fire this off. And now what we can do in Gumloop to see this run live, you can go to your Gumloop history and just refresh, and we'll be able to view what's going on in the background. So you can see it's running. I'm going to expand. I'm going to click view run, and this is going to open up the entire flow. Okay. So you can see it's already done the Typeform submission. Here is the website. Here are the contact details. Then it goes to our AI web research node. And what this is going to spit back is the LinkedIn URL of Shake Shack. I didn't even check to see if they have one. Then we have our LinkedIn scraper, which is scraping a whole bunch of information about Shake Shack. Then it's going to give it to our Ask AI node. And this is really the key node here. And so you can see it's saying, no, this is not a qualified lead. That's going to run through the if-else node. It's extracting all of the information to fill into Airtable, which it should be in Airtable. So when we go back to Airtable, there we can see our unqualified lead, Danny Meyer. Sorry, Danny, you're not an AI or tech company, so you're in the unqualified database. And if we go back into Attio, we can still see that that is blank. All right, and just to make sure that the lead qual AI part is working, let's test it with Sam here from OpenAI, and just to make sure that it's correctly categorizing this. So this is obviously AI tech, it's obviously US, and it's obviously more than 10 employees. So let's send that off. and we can come back into our history. We can refresh. So this is the one that just ran. And again, we have one that is currently running. My ATIO is blank. Airtable just has Danny Meyer. This is the one that just ran. And so let me click open this new run over here. All right, so we have the current run right now. So it's doing the same thing. I'll fast forward through this. All right, so it finished the web research. And this is actually the key one here, which is the Ask AI. So again, this is saying, is this a qualified lead? It correctly got that as yes. So this is where you can see injecting AI decision-making in the process of your automations, in the middle of your automations, can really take them to the next level. So this is going to finish up and hopefully write this to Airtable in just a second. Or excuse me, hopefully write this to ATIO in just a second. All right, so now it's running down the if path, which is the correct path. So now it's got to write all of those to ATIO, but we did have an error here. Let's see what the issue is. Oh, I know what the issue is. The issue is because of ATIO, we don't have the company in here yet, which is a prerequisite for ATIO to run the contact automation. So this is just, I can do this quickly. So what this is like an ATIO specific thing here where the company needs to exist first in your CRM. And by the way, you can do this in Gumloop itself. But in order to write a new contact, you have to have the company in here first. So we could have done this in Gumloop. I actually have this in another video, but this is how you're going to error shoot this. So now that I have OpenAI in the CRM, and again, this is specific to ATIO, but now that I have it as a company, it should allow me to write an individual from that company. And what we can do here is let's try to resume this. So I'm going to click resume and let's resume from the AI path just to be safe here. So it's going to run it back from the Ask AI node, come up with a decision again, and then try it again to rewrite that to ATIO. All right, it's trying down that if path again, and there we go. Run completed successfully. So if we hop back in to ATIO, there you can see we've got Sam, we've got the email address, and we've got the company. See, once we had that set up, that the AI was able to correctly distinguish that Sam was a qualified lead, and it was added to our ATIO database and not our Airtable database. So I think this is a great use case of, again, where we can interject AI decision-making in the middle of our automation. So if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments below what you want to see automated next.